Hello everyone. This video covers the solutions to test 1 review for Math 130 College Algebra. In question 1, you are given the graph of a function and you need to answer 4 questions. Now for part A, is asking you what is the domain. Remember, the domain are the x values or the input. Here the lowest x value is -2 and the highest you could say is 3.2, so you can just approximate. So if you write the answer in interval notation, you can say that the domain is from -2 to 3.2 or -2 less than equals to x less than equals to 3.2. If you write 3.3, that's also perfectly fine. To find the range, you look to the lowest y value you can have and the highest. In this case, the lowest it can go is -5 and the highest it can go is 4. So therefore the range, this is the lowest value and this is the highest value. In interval notation, this will be -5 to 4, or you can say -5 less than equals to y less than equals to 4. Either one is fine. Now notice though, just a side note, that if you're going to have an arrow here, then the domain will go from -5 to infinity because of the arrow, and the range will go from -5 to infinity also because of the arrow. But if there is no arrow, that means you stop there. So in this case, it will be here. Part C and Part D are actually pretty easy. The questions you will have on the exam, hopefully they will be exact, so you don't have to approximate anything. Here it's asking you what's the value of y when x is equals to 0. So when x is 0, that's right here. So the value for y is 2.3. Again, you need to approximate it, so whatever you write is technically correct. Then in Part D, it's asking you what's the value when x is negative 1.5. So this is -1. Negative 1.5 is here, so this is around -1. And that's it. All right, let's move on to question 2. Question 2 says the following: ABC buffet has the following pricing. If your party has 20 people or less, you pay $12 per person. The price for each additional person is $9. So here you have to write a piecewise function where x is the number of people. Okay. All right. So piecewise, remember, means you have more than one function. The first equation should be 12x, and this is true if you have 0 less than equals to x less than or equals to 20. For the second equation, you have to be a little bit careful. This is very simple, but you still have to be very, very careful. If you have more than 20 people, so that means this will be only true if x is more than 20. You have to pay $2.40 no matter what. How do we get to 40? Well, because if you have 20 people, that's the maximum you can get for this equation, and you have to pay 12 for each. Well, that will have to be 200. Plus, you have to pay $9 for each extra person over 20. And this is the part you have to be very careful. So this has to be x. Remember, x is going to be more than 20. So you're going to subtract 20 from this. And you can leave the equation like this, or you can simplify. You simplify, this will be 9x minus 180 from here plus 240, so this will be plus 60. So this could be the second equation, but it's not needed to do that. The advantage is that after that, all you have to do is plug in this value in this one, since 25 is more than 20, and that will give you the solution. So here you need to find f of 25. Since 25 is more than 20, you will use this equation, or you can just plug it in here too. Either one is fine. You should actually check you get the same thing. Doesn't matter if you use this one or this one. For example, for the first one, this is 240 plus 9. This will be 25 minus 20. So this will be 240 plus 9 times 5. So this is 240 plus 45. This is 285. Or f of 25, you use the second equation, which will be this one. This will be now 9 times 25 plus 60, which again is 285. So it's up to you which one you want to use. The number 3 is asking to solve the same problem using 3 different methods. The easiest one is factoring. Actually, it should be obvious. And then the second easiest is the quadratic formula. The one is a little more tricky, is completing the square, but you should have seen this before in Math 80 more than once, or intermediate algebra. Anyway, so the factoring, you need to find two numbers that multiply to 7 and add to -6. And this one is actually straightforward. You don't have much choices. 7 and 1. Remember, since this is negative, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. You just have to decide which one. So this is actually negative. This is positive. Why? Because -7 plus 1 is -6. Then that means that x plus 1 has to be 0, or x minus 7 has to be 0. So from factoring, the answers are -1 and 7. And when you do the other two methods, you need to get exactly the same answer. Let's do the quadratic formula next, because it's actually easier. Here, a is equals to 1, b is -6, and c is -7. So you plug it in the quadratic formula, which you can use the formula on the exam. This is minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. Everything divided by 2a. Remember that minus is plus, so this is 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus 7 times 4 is 28. Again, minus and minus is going to make this one plus. This is the only part where you can make a mistake, so just watch out for the signs. And everything is divided by 2. Then we have 6 plus or minus 64 divided by 2. 36 plus 28 is 64. So this is 6 plus or minus 8 divided by 2, which is 3 plus or minus 4. Now you can check from here that 3 minus 4 is equals to -1, which is the first answer we got. And the other one is at 3 plus 4, which is 7. And that's the second answer we got. Now, to complete the square, we only need the first two terms here. And you move the constant to the other side. Remember, to complete the square, whatever this number is, which in this case is -6, you divide that by 2 and square. So -6 divided by 2 is -3. Then -3 squared is 9. And you add 9 to each side. The point of this, again, is to get a square. On the right side, you have 16. On the left side, you have x minus 3 squared. So you should check that that's the case. Then take the square root on both sides, which is the square root property. So this is the square root property. On the right side, you're going to have plus or minus 4. On the left side, the square cancels the square root. So you end up with x minus 3. And then finally, you will have x, which is equals to 3 plus or minus 4, which is exactly the same thing we got here. And you already know that this is minus 1 and 7, so there's no need to check again. Okay, number 4, you can use any of the 3 methods, comparing the square, factoring, or the quadratic formula. Number 4 looks like maybe you can factor it, but let's just give it another shot at the quadratic formula. Here a is equals to 3, b is negative 1, and c is negative 3. All right, so then x is going to be minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac, everything divided by 2a. Again, minus and minus is plus, so this becomes 1 plus or minus 1 plus 4 times 3 is 12, times 3 is 36, and then minus and minus is plus, so this is plus 36. Everything divided by 6. So therefore this is 1 plus or minus the square root of 37 divided by 6. Now, given that we got a radical here, that means the factoring was not going to work. So therefore it was a good choice to use the quadratic formula. On part B, we have a perfect square. So this is a perfect square. So the best way or the best approach it would be to use the square root property. So we take the square root on both sides. Don't forget about the plus or minus on the right side. Remember the radical cancels the square root. So this is plus or minus 3. Then move the 7 to the other side. So it will be 7 plus or minus 3. Okay, plus 7 here and plus 7. So from here we will have x is equals to 7 plus or minus 3 over 2. Or 7 plus 3 is 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Or 7 minus 3 is 4 divided by 2, which is 2. So these are the two answers. In part C, you cannot use the quadratic formula the way it is. You cannot use the perfect square because it's not a perfect square. So the best thing to do is to distribute first, and then you can decide to use the quadratic formula or factor. So if we distribute, we will get x squared plus 2x minus 3x minus 6 is equals to 6. Then if we set everything equals to 0 and simplify, this will be x squared minus x minus 12 is equals to 0. So this will give you minus 12. And then this is pretty easy to factor. The numbers that multiply to 12 are 4 and 3. It's also 6 and 2 and 12 and 1, but 4 and 3 are the only ones that add or subtract to negative 1. So this has to be minus, this is plus. So from here we have that the answer is negative 3 for the first one and 4 for the second one. And that's it. Part D, we have to set the equation equals to 0 and then factor. So you have to make sure that this is 0. The GCF of 5 and 18 is 5. And the GCF of x squared and x cubed and x is x. So then we need x squared here to get 5x cubed and 16 to get 80x. The 5x is already factored, but the x squared minus 16 is a difference of squares. So you can factor it as x minus 4 times x plus 4. So this will give you this much. The 5x is already factored, so there's nothing you can do there. Now from here, that means that x has to be 0 because x cannot be 0. I mean, 5 cannot be 0. From here, x has to be 4, and from here, x has to be negative 4. So these are the three solutions. In number 5, you are given this function, which represents the height of a missile at time t, or the altitude at time t, where t is in seconds. Part A is the easiest of this problem, because all you have to do is plug in t equals to 0. Why? Because initial height means what is the height when t is equals to 0. So therefore, how much is h of 0? This will be minus 16 times 0 squared, 32 times 0 plus 240, which is equal to 240. So what this means, so that it makes sense, you have a building that the building is 240 feet high, and that's where you are throwing the missile from. Okay, so that's what it means. So this is a time equals to 0. That's what's going on. Part B is asking you how long does it take to hit the ground. So when you are in the ground, the altitude is equals to 0, or the height is 0. So therefore, you need to solve this. 16t squared plus 32t plus 240, this should be equals to 0. By the way, this kind of problems always have a minus 16 here, because that has to do with gravity. These numbers will be different, but this minus 16t squared is usually always here. Here the GCF is minus 16, so this will be t squared minus 2t minus 15. And as you can see, this is just a factoring problem. This will be t minus 5 and t plus 3. Y minus, because minus 5 plus 3 is minus 2, and negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. So therefore, the time it will take to hit the ground is 5 seconds, or negative 3. Now we cannot have negative time, so the only time is 5. Now if this keep going, then yeah, this could be negative time. But the only answer here is t is equals to 5. What is the maximum height reached by the missile? Now the maximum height is the vertex. So all you need to do is find the vertex. Remember, there are two ways to find the vertex. Depends on how the equation is given. If the equation is given like this, the best way to find the vertex is to use the formula t is equals to minus b over 2a, where a is minus 16, b is 32, and c is equals to 240. And then once you find t, just plug it into the function to find the value. So in our case, this will be minus 32 divided by minus 16 times 2, or 2a, which is equals to 1. And then you need to find HO1. So this is going to give you the maximum height, because this is the y coordinate. So it will be minus 16 times 1 square plus 32 times t plus 240, which is 16. This is a 1, 16 plus 240, which is 256. So therefore the maximum height is going to be 256 feet, which makes sense if you start in 240. After 1 second, This is 1 second. This is 5 seconds. Remember, it took 5 seconds to hit the ground. And in minus 3 seconds, technically it's on an imaginary ground too. Now, this is one way to check that you did this correctly. It took 1 second to get to the maximum height. The maximum height is 256. Notice that the distance between here and here is 4, and the distance between this and this is also 4. This has to be right in the middle, otherwise this is not the vertex. So that's how you can decide if this is the vertex or not. Now you can also do this by comparing the square on this one, but that's a little more work, but it's up to you. If you want to complete the square, then you will have to write h of t. You need to factor the minus 16. This will be t squared minus 2t plus the 240, and then complete the square. But if the equation looks like this, it's easier to do it this way, but it's up to you. In question 7, it's asking you to find the equation of the parabola. Like I just told you, there is technically two ways to do this. F of x can be written as ax squared plus bx plus c, or f of x will be ax minus h squared plus k. If you have a vertex, if the vertex is given, then this is probably the easiest one. So we're gonna go with this one, because here the vertex is just h k, and then which is given, and then you just have to figure out the value for a. So for example, here, this case, this is the vertex, which is the point 1, negative 1. So therefore, if we use this, we're like almost 80% done just by realizing that that's the vertex. So this will be x minus 1 squared minus 1. Why? Because here h is equals to 1 and k is negative 1. Those are the coordinates of the vertex. So we still need to figure out what is the value for a. So we still need this. And to figure that out, just pick a point in the graph, any point. It doesn't matter which one. Just make sure you pick a precise point. Obviously, the easiest one looks like this one, which will be 0, negative 2. That means x is 0 and y is negative 2. Then plug that into the equation we have. So remember, f of x and y is the same thing. So you have minus 2. So we're going to plug in the point 0, negative 2. So this will be negative 2 equals to a, which is what we're trying to find. X, we say, was 0, minus 1 squared minus 1. So this means minus 1 is equals to a minus 1, because minus 1 squared is equals to 1 times a. It just gives you a. Then you add 1 to both sides, and you will have minus 1 is equals to a. So therefore, the final answer will be f of x is equals to minus 1 times x minus 1 squared minus 1. And that's it. You can also figure the equation using the first formula, or the first version, which is this. However, for that, you're going to need to have 3 points. So you could use this point, and another point, and it will take a lot longer. For something like this, I mean, if you're given a graph, this is probably the easiest way to do it. Okay, question number A, part A, is essentially the same question we did right now in chapter 7, except that in chapter 7 it was given in a graph. Here they give you the vertex and they're giving you the point. So remember, when the vertex is given, the best formula to use is this one. Then all you have to figure out is pretty much the value A, because H and K are always whatever the vertex is. So in our case, we will have f of x is equals to the letter A. This will be x minus 2 squared minus 4. That's what we have so far. Then if we plug in this point, remember that this is x and this is y. That means that A is equals to the letter A. The value for x is 0 minus 2 squared minus 4. So we have A is equals to 4, letter A minus 4, which means that 12 is equals to 4A, or A is equals to 3. So then the equation we end up with is f of x is equals to 3 x minus 2 squared minus 4. That's it. Now, if the vector is not, if the vertex is not given, like I mentioned before, the question gets just longer. It's not necessarily harder, but it just gets longer. For example, here you need to use now the formula ax squared plus bx plus c equals to y. Well, remember, this is the x and this is the y. So if we use the first point, this means minus 3 will be equals to a times 0 squared, b times 0 plus c. So obviously from here, c is equals to minus 3. So you need to figure out a, b, and c. So we got one down, 2 more to go. You're gonna have to find a system of 2x2 equations and solve it. So that's why it requires much more work. For the second one, for the second point, this one is telling you that y is equals to a times 4 squared, which is 16, plus b times 4, which is 4b. And now we know the value for c. C is equals to minus 3. So from here, we end up with the following equation: 16a plus 4b is equals to 40. Okay, if you move the minus 3 to this side, it will give you 40. Then for the last point, if you plug that into here, you'll get 30 is equals to now 9, or 8 times 9, plus minus 3 times b minus 3. So this will give you the following equation: 9a minus 3b equals to 33. So now I have to solve this system of equations, and I will solve for a, but b is going to be the same thing. If you multiply this by 3, this by 4, you'll end up with 40a plus 12a equals to 120. This will give you 36a minus 12b, this should be b, not a, equals to 132. You can see here that this will cancel. So you will end up with 84a is equals to 252. And from here, the value for a is actually 3. Now you should check that the value for b is equals to -2. It's very easy. Once you find a, just plug this in here, actually in here or in here, and the value for b will be -2. Therefore, the final answer will be this: y is equals to 3x squared minus 2x minus 3. So this will be the solution. All right, so finally, question number 9, part A, the difference quotient. You do this, you did this on the participation number 1. And remember, I mentioned that this is going to be very important if you take calculus later. All right, so here we need to find first how much is f of x plus h, which in our case this will be 2/3 x plus h minus 5. This one is straightforward. It should be 2/3 x plus 2/3 h minus 5. Remember that the difference quotient formula is this, f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So in our case, this will be 2/3x plus 2/3 h minus 5. So that's the first part, minus f of x, which is 2/3 x minus 5. And all of this is divided by h. Again, this part is this, and this part is equals to this. Here you can see the 5 cancel right away, and this will cancel with that. So the only thing left is 2/3 h, everything divided by h, which is equals to 2/3. Remember, I told you this is just the slope, and you could see that this is the most basic equation where the slope is this. So there is no accident that this is just equals to 2/3. Now we did this one a few times, so just look over participation 1. We have done this a couple times there, but it's exactly the same thing. Once you try the problem yourself, you should end up with minus 2x plus 4 minus h, or something like this should be the answer to this. All right, that's it. Now the exam is based on these problems, so you will only have this kind of problems on the exam from question 1 to question 9. A slightly variation of them, but you can do these 9 problems. You should have no issues on the exam.